So I frequently watch or listen to The Verge. Really, I listen to the podcast through Spotify or YouTube Music or whatever, and figured, hey, since I'm on the computer, I might as well just pull up their YouTube channel. In addition to asking you to subscribe, I'd like to tell you about today's sponsor, Ice Sparkling Drinks. Now, this one is empty because I drank it because it was actually really good. But I've been buying these ice drinks for years. And recently I found out that they partnered with Starburst to create Starburst flavored beverages. Now I've tried all 4 flavors, the cherry, the lemon, the orange, and the strawberry. And while I feel most people think the strawberry Starburst is the best, which it is, drinking that just wasn't that pleasant. So I'm going to say the drink that's actually the best is the Starburst that's actually the worst, which is the orange one. This straight up tastes like orange soda, and I've had quite a few. And again, no B-roll, just of me drinking one of these because I already did. This stuff is good, so consider trying one. But I thought that this was very interesting. I mean, things getting uncovered when it comes to how Google is controlling the search marketplace, I guess, and the deals that they've made with Apple. And for a while, we've known, when I say a while, maybe a year-ish or some change, that we've known that Google pays quite a bit of money to Apple to be the default search engine on iOS and macOS devices. But now coming to light are some of the stipulations that have been put in place that Apple has to abide by legally. And for $20 billion, I can understand why Apple is like, yeah, we'll comply with those. I mean, yeah, it's free money. And essentially, Apple is getting paid $20 billion to not do something, which would be create their own search engine. So let's listen to a few things here, and then I'll come back and we'll talk.
Yeah, we should generally talk about Apple, but
yeah, let's talk about
Google
Apple.
pays Apple $20 billion a year, and Google has also internally estimated that for Apple to build a search engine will cost Apple $20 billion. Right. So there's only so many companies that can compete with Google. One of them is Apple. One of them, and there's like lots of reasons for that. One of them, the most important one, is that Apple can set the default on an iPhone. So it can collect all of this data. And like a huge percentage of Google's queries for search come from default placements, right? It's like 50% of all Google search queries come from default placements on mobile or desktop, whether it's Android phones or iPhones or whatever. So Apple has a massive share of those default placements, particularly on mobile. And so it could build a search engine. It can compete because it has all of that. And Google pays the money to keep them from doing it. And inside of that services agreement, it also puts in conditions that Apple agrees not to make things that look like search better at search. So Siri can't get better. I think the agreement says it can't get better than it is today, or it can't be meaningfully improved faster than it is today. Spotlight search can't get better. There's some documents that are, as part of the exhibits, Apple considered putting some advertising into Spotlight search on the iPhone. And they just well, we got to talk to Google about that, but we don't want to renegotiate this Google deal. I guess we won't do that. And you can just see them. They're just held back by the existence of this deal and its conditions with Google.
And I thought that was pretty interesting, that even though, I guess, looking at it from the outside, you're like, oh, yeah, Google search is what we use when we're online. Like, that is a product, and that is what we do when we're online trying to find something. Spotlight search on the phone or on the Mac or Siri, like, you wouldn't necessarily think that there would be some type of connectedness to it. But I guess Google said, hey, there's a possibility that people would prefer to use your first party solution to then access the web, to then get whatever it is that they're trying to get. So therefore, we have to say that you can't make it better than what it currently is. And I thought that was interesting. I really did. And it's unfortunate. And there's a few more things, or really one more thing that he'll say later on, but I'll just mention this right now, that for years now, I've been on the bandwagon, and it's not a bandwagon, it's just a true statement that, you see Google, I guess publicly shaming Apple for For instance, not adopting RCS, like, oh, you're making things worse for your customers, blah, 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 blah. Apple, you need to do a better job, blah, 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 blah. Let's put on this grandiose display of, oh, we as Google are trying to do the right thing by our customers, but Apple is the one that's holding us back. Now, in the case of messaging standards, yeah, you could make an argument, whatever. But I find it interesting that that Google is trying to blame Apple, or at least was trying to blame Apple for that. But then here, on the other side of the company, they are actively paying Apple to not make their things better. So I've ragged on Apple for a lot of stuff. And then, I have ragged on Google for certain things too, like I've made my Pixel 9 videos or whatever. And yeah, at the end of the day, we are all just their customers, and we are all, I guess, at the whim of whatever they choose to do today or this week or this month. And collectively, yeah, it's nice to have these products, but we're still kind of losing, like talking to you on this Mac. So boom, Apple product. My primary devices over here are all Android phones. Microsoft is in the mix, but not really in the context of this part of the conversation. But to go back to what we're talking about, search engines, let's finish listening to what he says somebody else said about Microsoft and the possible use of Bing.
We've asked a million times, why doesn't Apple just build a search engine? And the answer is $20 billion a year. Yep. That's just fully the answer. And that's actually the thing that's anti-competitive, not the default placement, right? Not buying the default. It's the conditions that say you also cannot compete with us.
But Apple doesn't want to, right? Like they said, no, we don't want to use Bing. We don't want to put something else in.
One of the absolute funniest conditions of the agreement with Google is that Apple is required to defend the deal against regulatory actions. So Apple said a bunch of stuff in this trial, but they're legally obligated because of their contract with Google to co-defend the deal in the face of regulatory efforts.
That's not shady. That's totally a normal way to do business. It's fine.
It's true that Apple says they don't want to, they don't need to. Apple repeatedly said that Google's the best. There are some incredible quotes here. Eddie Q testified. They said, would you ever use Bing? And he said, there's no price Microsoft could pay to make us set Bing as the default. And then he said they could give us the whole thing for free. They could give us the company and we wouldn't use Bing. Like Microsoft, you could just have Microsoft. And he's like, no, Google is the best. And it's like, maybe you believe that, but maybe.
And yeah, that's a big extreme. And he goes on and he's like, well, if Tim Cook were literally presented with, hey, Satya Nadella, I think is how you pronounce his name. I think Tim Cook will be like, $20 billion is a lot from Google, but if we get an entire company, Microsoft at that, and maybe we're going to have to re-look at this $20 billion because of what we will gain as a result of now owning all of Microsoft. But just the ridiculousness of what somebody was saying on the stand, because the contract says you have to support this deal against regulatory actions. So no price. Could Microsoft pay us to use Bing? They could just give it to us for free. They could give us the whole company and we still wouldn't use it. But that's what the contract says. And, kudos to the gentleman who was on the stand for putting on such a performance. It would have been nice to actually see him say that. But yeah, all that, just go back to what I was talking about. I think collectively a lot of us have ragged on Apple for stuff. But here's a great example of Google literally paying Apple to not improve some of their stuff. And Apple being like, it's $20 billion to not have to do something, I think will be okay. So yeah, sometimes it just kind of sucks when we actually have to deal with stuff like this. That's all for today.